Loretta, is that under control or do you need help?
Okay.
All right. This is probably one of those passages that the preachers and working preachers suggest. This is the passage that you give to your intern. Can I get an amen from the pastor emeritus? Yeah. I like having the pastor emeritus back to be able to do those call and responses with each other. First off, the passage begins, if a member of the church sins against you. This is a global teaching. I mean, this is a particular teaching. It's about life within the community, life within the church. It doesn't say if anyone sins against you. It says if a member of the church sins against you. The church is supposed to be an alternate community. In the dominant society, is it a good idea? It is not a good idea. Let me go ahead and say that as an affirmation. To just go ahead and confront anybody that has offended you. But the church is to be an alternate community. To offend somebody, as it says in this passage, is to shame them. The ancient culture in which this was written was an honor-shame culture. Honor, that is the esteem, that is a person's reputation, was the most valued thing that they had. To lose honor was to lose place. To lose honor was to lose access to resources. To lose honor might be to be cast out of a community, and no one survived outside of community. There were no Kit Carsons in the ancient Middle East. But my grandparents on my father's side were of, my grandfather was of pure Hispanic lineage. He was born of a Spanish family in the Philippines when it was an American protectorate, and my grandmother was of Scottish heritage. They had immigrated to Colombia. And so they were Latinos. And my mother said they had some horrendous fights. Yelling and screaming at each other. Have any of you been around an Italian family? They have some incidents too. These are Mediterranean cultures, and unlike the reserved folks of Northern Europe, they will get into conflict. And conflict can erupt, and it can get into a blood feud. As we were standing on a dock in Italy talking to each other, my girlfriend and I, about why it was that the Dutch spoke perfect English, but the Italians didn't speak English to you. I wondered if as many Italians knew English as Dutch. The Dutch did, and she said, they do. They just don't want to use it. And she said, I know my people. She was Italian, American, Italian on both sides, all the way up. She said, I know my people. These people were conflictual, and Jesus and his disciples knew the people, and they knew that they could get into conflict. So they offered a prescription. This is not a prescription for all conflicts. In the church, there will be disagreement. One of the writers at Working Preacher wrote this week, wherever two or more are gathered, it can be really hard to get along. Can I get an amen from the people? Anybody want to put up a hand for a marriage that never had any sort of conflict or disagreement? I didn't think so. There are folks who look at marriages and will describe sequences, and first is the falling in love sequence and being completely enamored of each other. And then there's the struggle for power. While he was president, President Obama said, as soon as I discovered that Michelle was always right, everything was fine after that. In a marriage, there is always a struggle for power. So we have disagreements. We have conflict. This is a prescription for resolution. It's a prescription for resolution to keep the community together. What precedes this passage is the story of the 99 sheep and the one that goes astray. And we know that the shepherd leaves 99 perfectly good sheep. There are folks in the army who will jump out of perfectly good airplanes. Anybody catch that? I rode a boat that would deliberately sink, made by the lowest bidder. This shepherd left 99 perfectly good sheep to find one lost, dumb sheep. And Jesus says to the people, he says, who wouldn't do this? Now this is an absurd statement by Jesus, and we need to do our studying of the Bible to understand that this is in fact a statement of absurdity. Because the folks surrounding Jesus, as they heard this, looked at him and asked, as people would in the Midwest, what are you, nuts? Nobody leaves 99 perfectly good sheep to go find one. And in words that we like to use today, any good shepherd would do a cost-benefit analysis and think, I got 99 perfectly good sheep here, and I got one that's out there in the wilderness. I'm going to stay here with the 99 perfectly good sheep. I wish the other one luck. Coyotes got to eat too. Jesus precedes this passage with a passage that says, God is absurd. God will seek out the lost. Then he gives this passage that if there is offense within the church, we should do all we can do to reconcile. And he follows this passage with the one about how often should we forgive. 7 times 70. This could go off the rails. I certainly hope it doesn't. When a pastor leaves a call, he or she is not to perform pastoral responsibilities in the previous call. I got a call when I was up in Nashua, Iowa, from a family in Wheatland, and it was not long after I left, and they didn't know the new minister, and I had known the deceased, so they asked if I could come and do the funeral, which was at the funeral home. And I was still stupid, so I said yes. In a conversation with the associate conference minister, I said, well, it was at the funeral home. If you met David Ackerman, this associate conference minister is is as good as David Ackerman. I mean, as good a human being as David Ackerman and more. And Jonah says, I don't care if it's at the gas station. You can't do something like that. There were 3 young women in Wheatland whose weddings it would have been the joy of my life to perform. But I couldn't. And one day, I got upset because I saw that Wayne had written another article for the newsletter, and he hadn't talked to me. And the only time that I'm Latino is when anger comes up. And so I jumped the shark. And I wish I hadn't, because Wayne has been gone from us for a while. So we had a conversation Friday night, right? We had a conversation Friday night. And I invited Wayne to return. And I can't remember who the actor was who did a one-man skit for Harry Truman. And he had this scene where Truman invites Hoover to come in and to manage the Marshall Plan. And one of the things that Truman said was that he thought that former presidents were a wasted resource. And when he asked Hoover, who had left office in disgrace, to perform this service, it made Hoover cry. We all know that I am not worthy to untie the thong of the pastor emeritus sandals. At least his wife is laughing.
I was ready to say amen.
That would have been good. But for him to leave us and to take his wisdom with him is a loss. And so I called him the other night and I asked him to return. Would you imagine that when I asked him to do this, he said, good, I'll do this. I mean, he had taken what I had suggested and gone further with it. Does that sound like Wayne? But I would like Wayne to come up at this time and to talk about what our relationship needs to be. He said he already has this prepared. Can you imagine that Wayne has prepared remarks?
I'm going to take my mask off too.
You may speak at the lecture.
Oh, I got a big mouth.
And the people said?
I want to thank John for I should have done this a long time ago, and I want to thank him for the opportunity to do this. There's an elephant in the room that you all know. The things have not gone well in terms of trying to readjust to having someone new. And I felt that I was caught in the middle of that. That people were coming to me with opinions, people were coming to me with complaints, and I thought, Pastor John is not going to be able to come and settle in and for you to get to know him if I stayed in the middle. And so my appeal is, my plea is to please understand, I am not your pastor. I want to be just a member of this congregation like all of you. I want to sing in the choir. I want to be able to make fun of his sermons like you do. I just want to be able to do all the things that a normal does. And I have to say that John and I have been talking a lot of hours on the phone, off and on, and in person. This, I can't imagine in my worst nightmare, a worse time to be a pastor changing churches. With this virus thing, so John gets here, he has a couple of months to try to adjust, and then what happens? The virus comes. We have to go virtual. Can you imagine being someone new coming from a backwater state like Iowa into God's country, and then not being able to fit in, not being able to be in a situation where people come. He's a different animal from me and from Cindy. Cindy and I are outgoing, gregarious. We never know when to shut up. We tend to dominate. That's who we are. That is not Pastor John. He is reflective. He is quiet. Ask my family. I could walk up and try to sell a vacuum cleaner to a stranger on a corner. We are just different personalities. I need to tell you that this is a good man. We have spent many hours talking. He is a God-filled man. He is a spiritual man. His humor's a little weird, but he is a good man, and he is a good pastor. And I hope that we can pull things back together. Everyone needs to stop, pause, take a breath, and step back, and kind of say, can we rewind this? Can we do take two? My heart is breaking when I hear that there are disputes in the consistory. 15 years, we never had that. Why is that? Everyone needs to just relax. This passage this morning is perfect. The search committee did their job. And someone has come in now who is a good person, a good pastor, but he is different in his personality. John would never walk up to a stranger on a street corner and try to sell him a vacuum cleaner. You'd have a nervous breakdown, wouldn't you?
Pretty close.
Yeah.
I'd have to take Sophie with me.
So, that road goes both ways. I can come out. When was the last time you went and said to Pastor John, I am so-and-so. This is who I am. Welcome. That street goes both ways. Everyone says the pastor needs to know everyone. Well, but that's hard to do, especially with the virus, where you can't even be together in church. Does that all make sense to you? So I'm begging you, step back. You have a very good pastor in front of you, but you just have to adapt to a different personality. If you have a problem with me, you don't think I had problems? My first Sunday here, I think it was. Remember Walt and Shirley Robb, or not Shirley, Helen and Robb used to sit there? I walked in down that ramp and Helen Robb looks up and says, I don't like you. Okay, what in the heck have I got myself into? We, of course, became very good friends. Such good friends that another time, a couple of years later, I walked down and Helen looks over and says, you're getting too fat. So I lost 30 pounds. The luncheon here, I'm standing out there, and an unnamed member, the whole family is now departed, comes up to me and thumps his finger in my chest and says, preacher, let me tell you how it is around here. And I stood there smiling, and then when he was finished, I took my finger and poked his chest and said, well, let me tell you what it's like about me, what I'm like. Pastor John, if that had happened to him, I think he would have just stood along the wall in shock and said, dear God, what have I gotten myself into?
I'm sorry you feel that way.
So we're different. We all have, you've just forgotten how you had to adapt to me. And you have to adapt. We're all different. Tell him who you are. Share your personality with him. There used to be we don't do it anymore in our culture, but there used to be a time in seminary, the joke was, you better not be a minister unless you like chicken and peas.
Because every member of the congregation would usually invite you to Sunday dinner, and guess what you have? Chicken and peas. So, I just wanted to say those things. I love being here. You're my family. The pastor emeritus thing is a great honor to me. I treasure it. But that does not, that is an honorary title. It is a title that you chose to award me with out of love. I am not your pastor. That fine gentleman back there is your pastor. So everybody, I think, step back, take a deep breath when this COVID is over, and say, it's time to begin again.